Hey guys, and welcome to One More Thing. Today we are just talking about what hit the cutting room floor in our sermon series on Luke, and we've been in Luke now for several weeks, and we're going to continue to talk about what hit the cutting room floor and then maybe some other things from each chapter in Luke as we go throughout the week. Today I have Pastor David with me, our lead pastor here at First Church, and also my husband. So there's that as well. But then also we have Pastor Jake over here who's sitting in with us today. So just some
Pastor Jake.
Fun conversation today about, actually, we are in Luke 15 this week. And so
we skipped a few.
Yeah, we did skip a few.
Skipped a few chapters.
Pastor David did remind us on Sunday that if we're going to get to the resurrection on Easter, we had to skip a few chapters in Luke.
We probably want to on Easter hit the resurrection. I was thinking.
Yeah, maybe.
You're not going to leave people hanging like right at the death,
right
Good
at
Friday,
the death.
and that's it.
Yeah.
The end of the story.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it doesn't work.
We're all done.
Yes, we're at the trial on Easter. No, we want to make sure we get to the resurrection.
He is risen.
Yeah,
he is risen.
Risen.
Indeed.
So today we're going to talk about Luke chapter 15. And so let's talk about highlights from the sermon. This week we actually it's not the whole chapter of Luke 15 that we talked about. However, Luke 15 there's three stories that Jesus tells: the lost coin, the lost son, and the lost sheep. But this Sunday we really did focus in on the prodigal son, the lost son. And so for me, some of the highlights, I was here at St. Joe campus with you, Pastor David, and what really was a highlight for me was you talking about the older son, which typically when we talk about the prodigal son, we kind of focus in on the younger son, and the focus you had on the point that Jesus was making, and probably the Pharisees didn't even really get, was that they are the older son, which I thought was a really interesting take on that. That was a highlight for me, I think, from your sermon. Were there any highlights for you, Pastor Jake, from you were at Stevensville campus?
Mine would be a bit of a piggy. There I am. A little bit of a piggyback off of that is this whole idea that, we talked about the son that went away and he wanted his dad's possessions. And then we talked about the older son who also wanted his dad's possessions. Like they both had their priorities out of whack. He talked about, like, you don't even give me a goat to celebrate with my friends, and I'm working so hard for this and that and whatever. Their motives were all wrong, both of them. So neither one was the son that was in the right.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, they're the Pharisees would have been those that are the older son.
Because they were, and then the tension that sets up the story was in those first few verses where Jesus is inviting sinners in and tax collectors in, and he's hanging out with them, and they're upset. What's it say? They grumbled. The scribes grumbled, and Pharisees grumbled. There's a lot in that word grumbled. And so they were upset, and so it says, so he told them, because he receives sinners and eats with them. So he told them this parable or these parables.
Yeah.
And so that's the tension. So Jesus, wow, would you boys sit down? Let me share a little.
Let me learn you something.
Let's talk a bit.
And he was not afraid to step on toes.
Jesus was not afraid to step on toes.
He kind of had to wear steel-toe boots around him.
Yeah. So was there anything this week as you studied that you felt like, man, I'd love to get to this, but just don't have the time? Some things that hit the cutting room floor for you out of Luke chapter 15. Pastor David, was there?
Well, the one thing is just you go to the end of the story. So you have the sheep, the lost coin, and then here's the lost son. And so we think of it that way. But then you get to the end of the story, and the brother is outside. Him and his dad are talking. At the end of the story, the father just reiterates, it was fitting to celebrate and be glad for this brother. Yes, your brother was dead and he's alive. He was lost and is found. Boop, drops the mic, and the story's over. So you don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
does the older son, is he like, oh, Dad, you're right. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. And then he goes into the party. We don't know. Does he stay out? Does he stay outside? Does he go in? Do they argue more? I mean, you really, and so I loved, and so we were talking about it in our, we have a sermon prep meeting. So we're talking about next week with the campus pastor just this morning, and Pastor Jaime, I love it. He said this. He said, I told the congregation at Heights that we get to write the end of the story.
Oh, that's good.
Ooh.
So
I like
that's
that.
good because
Yeah.
really for most people in the church, I mean, we want the church to be a place where those that are lost and are living far away could come and they can hear truth and celebrate and see the difference Christ has made in our lives, and it kind of rubs off on them. They realize that there's this party going around them and they want to be part of it. So that's certainly, we want and invite that to happen every week. But then most of the time, most of the people in worship with us on a weekend are older brother types. And so how are we going to write the end of the story? Are we going to get excited about what God gets excited about?
Yeah.
What the Father gets excited about? Or are we going to be standing there with our arms crossed?
Grumbly.
Grumbly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The grumpy, grumbly people.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. So Chris actually, he ended. There I am again. He ended his sermon literally. He was like, "The end." He literally said, "The end," and then prayed. It was like, "Wait, oh, okay." What?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Jaime was like, "We get to
Yeah.
to say the end of the story." Of course, Chris did a little more wrapping up, like
Sure.
in his prayer kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did find it like kind of made a point, and it was the same idea that Jesus had there, like
Yeah.
end of story. Here we go.
Yeah.
So
Because and unfortunately, too often in the church, we want the vocabulary of people of faith too often is we want to be right versus rejoicing. We the vernacular of the right, we're in the right versus rejoicing and longing to see people come home.
Yeah, we talked some this week in our Luke companion journal, which you can access on our website or also on our app, which just takes you throughout the whole chapter, even though we only get to preach just a portion of the chapter, but the companion journal takes you all the way through the chapter. And one of the things that we talk about in that companion journal is that sometimes the overlooked thing in chapter 15 is the joy, the joy piece that comes when the lost is found. In all of those stories, and so we can't forget that as believers.
Yeah, all those stories have that component in them.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so there's something else
Okay,
related
all
to
right.
the party.
Hit us. Let's
Okay,
this is the second more thing.
the second more. Yeah,
more
that was one more
Yeah,
thing.
that was
the
one
second
more.
more. The
The
second
second
We're
more
going to
thing.
modify our name. So the second more thing
Three more things.
is that just think about it for a minute. Who financed the Okay, so let me take you there. So we got the
He's really excited about this.
I am
second more
excited
thing.
about this. This is because
Yeah.
this is a new kind of a thought that I didn't have a chance to share. Okay, so you've got the younger brother. He goes to the dad and says, "Hey, Dad, I want my stuff and I want it now," which would have meant the father would have had to liquidate some of the estate because it's not like he's got cash. He's not going to Fifth Third and taking out a big load of cash or well, if you can transfer this to my Swiss bank account, and then I can access it online.
And the
He
payments.
probably had it in his safety deposit box.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
So all that gets liquidated. So the older brother's portion, him and his dad, they're living there. So think about it. The party's going on. The fatted calf gets what happens to fatted
Burgered.
calves?
Yes.
Barbecued.
Murdered.
The murdered.
I think burger's a little easier to swallow.
I thought you said murdered.
No, burgered.
I did say murdered.
She said murder.
Okay. So it's
This might be going south. Let's back to you.
back to so the older brother, it's his inheritance that's financing the party.
Ooh. Yeah.
So the resources that were what's left are the resources that are going to be his. So there was a cost to the older brother for the younger son to come home because he lost everything. Now, if he's home, that means that he's going to be paying for everything. And again, that just illustrates, the sacrifice, for as the older brother, there are costs at times for people to come home and for us to reach people that are far from God and those things and to be happy about that and excited about that. So I just had never thought about that though, that it really was the older brother. And is that some of what he's grouchy about and mad about? That he sees dollar signs, and how many times are we more concerned about dollar signs than people? And there's a lot there.
I don't know. I think there's certainly a possibility to that, but I think there's also just, we all just there's this fairness factor. That's not fair.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A jealousy, an unfairness kind of factor about it. That when I think about this story, that's what I think about the older brother. Like, come on, man.
That's not fair.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
We do not want God to be fair to us. Heaven help us. Heaven help us if our goal in life is for God to be fair to us. Because if it's fair,
we're in trouble.
Sunk. It is.
We're in trouble if it's fair.
That scenario does not end well for us.
No, it does not.
And it wasn't fair what Jesus got either.
No.
So thank the Lord that none of us got.
That's good. That's good.
That was fair.
That is good.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a third more thing?
A third more thing.
I got one third more thing, and the third more thing is if you think about the father, then the father doesn't just run out to meet the younger son when he comes home. The father runs out of the party, goes out of the party to humble himself and to plead with the older son as well. The party's going on. And so we think, he just has this real concern for the younger brother. But no, the father has a genuine, deep concern for the older brother as well. And so that was just another little tidbit to think about him coming out of the party, all that's going on, and everybody's celebrating. And how does it even say? Because it's interesting the way it says it. And he was talking. Oh, okay.
Was that a grumble?
I should have looked this up. Sorry. He came out. So the older brother's verse 28. But he was angry. This is the older brother. He was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. So it's like he's trying to talk some sense into him, but but you see just compassion too with the way that he's talking to his older son.
Right.
So he doesn't, you think, well, he could have really come down on the younger son, and I can't believe it. Well, he could really come down on the older son too, but he doesn't do that either.
Which, if you look at this and you kind of correlate it to the church and to the heart of the Father, he cares about reaching the lost, but he also cares about discipling the hearts of the believer too, and calling us out when we need it. So there is that twofold thing there of he cares about the lost, but he also cares about when his sheep get a little confused about things and a little lost themselves. So I think that it's this twofold thing that we can't forget about, that both matter to the Father.
Yeah.
The religious and those that need Jesus. So he cares about both.
And he's taking steps towards us.
Yes.
He's taking steps towards us if we're lost in the far country, slopping the pigs.
Right.
And he's taking steps towards us if we're the grouchy older brother that's grumbling outside of the party.
Yeah.
In the Father's house, in proximity, but still our posture toward others is off. The Father's taking steps towards us. He doesn't just leave us out there while everything else is going on. He comes out.
And it's also for us as ministers of the gospel, but also those of us that call ourselves part of the family of God, that there is room for both evangelism and discipleship. that we need to have a heart for both of those things, that we can't do one at the cost of the other, that it all matters to the heart of the Father, as we see in this scripture. All right, so I want to now move, unless you have a fourth
Well,
one.
I did have I thought it was
fourth
an
more
interesting
thing, yeah.
illustration that I
Okay.
didn't get to.
Go for
I would
it.
call it a fourth more thing.
Fourth
I'm
more
ready.
thing. Let's go.
Here we go.
Okay, so Abraham Lincoln, remember him? The
Yes, I
former
do
president?
remember
Okay.
him.
Who's that?
Abraham,
Yeah.
Abe Lincoln, was asked how he was going to treat the rebellious Southerners once they finally had been defeated and returned to the Union of the United States. The questioner expected that Lincoln would take dire dire vengeance against them, but he answered this. This is what Abraham Lincoln said in response: "I will treat them as if they'd never been away." That's what Abraham Lincoln said at the end of the Civil War. I'll treat them as if they'd never been away. And we, there's just
Yeah.
do we live that way?
Right.
We see that in the story.
Or do we turn our nose up? I've been here longer than you.
It's not fair.
Not fair.
yeah, it's not fair. You didn't
fair.
get, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So good. Thank you for your one more thing, your second more thing, your third more thing, and your fourth more thing. We appreciate all of
And
it.
could I just remind everybody of something that was referred to that's not another thing, but just a reminder. In case you didn't see the message, you can check it out at myfirstchurch.com or our YouTube page or our podcast page app. There's a lot of ways.
A lot of ways.
A lot of ways to see it.
Lots of ways.
But I referred to an illustration. I used an illustration at the end that came from Philip Yancey's book, "What's So Amazing About Grace?" And that's a great story within a tremendous book. This story in Scripture is about God's grace.
Yeah.
And Yancey wrote just a wonderful book. So if
So
you're
the
looking
book
for
again is "What's So Amazing About Grace" by Philip Yancey, and his last name is spelled Yancy. So
and if you want to get it, I saw, because I was wanting to make sure I've got it in my library, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, a long story short, it's only $5 if you want to buy a used version of it.
on Amazon. There you go.
So-
Tip
But
of the
is
day.
shipping
tips.
like 15?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
be. Could
Yeah.
be.
All right. So let's.
But it's what you're saying is it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth $5.
Right.
It's worth paying full price for it.
There you go.
Yes.
To buy it
Yeah.
too, so.
Yeah. So one more question.
Okay.
One more thing.
Yes.
So is there anything in this chapter that if you would have had time to preach it, you would have liked to have preached it?
Those four things.
Okay. All right. So nothing else in there that's preachable.
Well, I think, just that chapter. I mean, we focused
Yeah.
on that last story, but the chapter is so rich. It really, obviously you could preach a whole sermon, and I have, on the lost sheep.
Yeah.
It's just a whole thing of leaving the 99 and going in search of the one. And that how here at First Church, that's one of the things that we talk about.
Yeah.
Who is your one? That we should have a one. We, if you were here, maybe you picked up one of these prayer cards, and encourage you to write, someone down that you're praying for, and who's that person that you could just be reminded to pray for your one. We all should
Right.
have a one to
Be praying
to
for.
be praying for. And then the lost coin, that's really, the coin was lost within the confines of the house. And that's a little older brother-esque Pharisee, grumbly Pharisee verbiage too. You're lost in proximity. You're still in the house, but you're lost within the house.
Yeah.
There's lost people within the house that, think that they are
So-
where they need to be, but
Yeah,
not
it's
quite.
talking about that particular story. One thing that I noticed in that story was that when she loses her coin and she goes in search of it, as she searches, she lights a lamp and she sweeps her entire house. And when I read that, I thought, we need to get our own house in order as we go searching for that lost one, that we need to make sure our lives are, those of us that do have a relationship with the Lord, are a picture of Jesus, so that those that are lost can see him through us, because that's that's what we're supposed to be doing, is to be a light here in this world for Jesus. And I thought, is there some sweeping I need to do in my own life as I go and search for the lost one?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that really stuck out to me. So is there anything personally, you guys, as we wrap up today, was there anything personally that just kind of struck a chord in your heart as you read through this chapter 15 of Luke?
Well, I think probably for me, the thing that's the most personal application is just the idea that the older brother, when he's talking to his dad, he hasn't been into the party. He's not talked to his brother. He's not seen his brother, but yet he says of his brother that he squandered everything with prostitutes. And so he doesn't know all of his brother's story. He doesn't know everything that's happened. He knows his brother's back, but he doesn't know all that's happened. And so those gaps, the older brother fills in the gaps of his brother's story with judgment. And he speaks that judgment as fact. He doesn't fill in the gaps with grace. And that I can be like the older brother when I don't know someone's story, every bit of it or piece of it. And instead of filling in the piece I don't quite understand with grace, I know in my own life, I too often will fill it in with judgment. And it was a come to Jesus type moment of the Lord checking me and just inviting me to fill in blanks in other people's story with more grace than judgment.
Yeah. I think you talked about the loveless one.
Yeah.
And I think, it's really easy when there are those ones in our life that are hard to love. And
You're
being
not
careful.
talking about me, are you?
No, no, you are not hard to love. I've loved you for 35 years. But
Okay, just checking.
I think that there are those that the one that are maybe close to us that are hard to love, and just praying that God would protect my heart from becoming the loveless one.
Yeah.
That I will set the temperature, and that God would set the temperature in my life, that I could be a thermostat that sets a temperature of love, and not a thermometer that sometimes might allow my temperature to be set by those that maybe are hard to love. So that was a personal application for me. Anything for you, Pastor Jake?
Yeah. So there I am. I'm struggling on hitting the right buttons
That's
today.
all right.
I'm over here. We talked about the two brothers and kind of their motivation a little bit, and that just really hit hard for me, even going into Sunday.
Yeah.
And so just this idea, and so we even responded with a song called Nothing Else, and it's just, the idea is that I don't want anything else but you, just your presence, Lord. I don't want the stuff. I don't want the blessing that you give me. It's not about any of that. It's about nothing else that you can do for me.
Yeah.
Just about being with you, being in your presence.
Yep.
And it's a challenge to say that's true for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like
in our honest moments.
Yeah.
I like my stuff.
Yeah.
And
We all do.
I like it when I can tell that he is there, that his presence is a part of my life. But do I love his presence more than all of that stuff to the point where I'm willing to spend that time with him?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that question. And I think that's okay. I'm working at it.
Yeah.
Working toward it.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress.
Yeah. So that was my
That's
takeaway.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, guys, thanks for being here with me today. And thank you guys for joining us on this journey through Luke. And again, you can access the Luke Companion Journal on our website. It's really easy to find at the top there of the page, and also on our app. Also, just want to remind you all just one little thing. Next week is spring break around here in Michigan. Whoop, whoop. We're really excited about that. And so
it'll be like 30 degrees on the average.
So we will be taking a break from One More Thing next week, as we several of us are out of town and those kind of things. So we will see you the following week, where we'll be back with One More Thing. But just want to remind you, if you don't see us next week, there is a reason for that. So You guys, thanks for being with us, and we hope that you'll continue to walk along with us. The companion journal will, however, continue next week through spring break. We'll still have that available for you, as well as an amazing sermon on Sunday morning in Luke chapter 17. We're skipping 16, but feel free to read it. And then we'll be in Luke 17 for Sunday at church. So, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.